All right, so we opened at 72.94. $72.94 with a 26 straddle takes us to about 72.20. And we almost traveled the entire straddle already. That's interesting. Let me check again. Yeah, 27. Yeah, so I'm gonna push the straddle to 73.20. The straddle low happens to be the downside pivot. Very interesting. Funny how that lines up like that. It's good SMT divergence there between ES and NQ. Overnight, we ended up hitting 73.40, I believe. So because we hit 73.40, give me one sec here. Just showing the breakdown by strike. The positioning had about 1,400 positions at 73.40 prior to market open. You can kind of see this on the top right hand corner. That's a daily position. It's a position as of, I believe, midnight New York time. And there's like a positive gamma cluster that you can see. So this is dealer positive positioning, which is customer short positions. So they're premium harvesting. So ideally, in order for the customer to make money on these positions, the SPX price has to be below the strike to collect the full premium. This basically acts like some sort of call wall, if you will. These are technically customer short calls here. It looks like we're headed right into that dark blue area. We're in the upside pivot right now that Alma had identified. Hey, Koshik. So Alma was saying above the centroid, 73.13, above this, spot will be magnetized to 73.50. So that call wall is also acts like a magnet if price should continue going up. But if we stall there, it's a good reversion point. I was after you got off stream, I decided to take a trade, very low probability trade, but I figured I was in profit, so might as well give it a shot. And ended up giving back about 6 SPX points or ES points because I tried to short. Horrible short spot, but I had also mentioned on stream that it was likely it was likely that the price of SPX was going to drift up to, I believe, 72.70. That seemed to be like the magnet point, and we ended up going there, and that's where it would have been nice to play a short. I think I also mentioned that Claude had picked up a potential pin at around 72.50 and 72.60 were high probability pins. And I think at the end of the day, we settled around 72.60 after hitting 72.70. It's kind of nice to see it play out from a gamma and charm profile perspective, and also just dealer positioning in general. It's the only reason why I mention it. But in theory, where I entered, I probably should have just went long because my bias was up. But for whatever reason, I wanted to play. Well, I think it's the reversion trade in me that loves to go against trend and loves to play mean reversions. So we hit the upside pivot. She said 73.20 is a local resistance, but very weak. That's a bet that 7,300 will pin with a margin of error of 72.90. The downside pivot is way down there at 72.64. That would imply a gap fill. But she's expecting today to be a premium burning day. So likely a bear squeeze, no momentum edge. The ODT straddle, I think I mentioned, was about 26, 27. In that range there. I've adjusted the straddle to suit. Yesterday I was cycling through Twitter and just wanted to see what Yamco and Tony Mansour was saying, since they were doing a midday flow show. So I was listening to that, recording it, transcribed it, and threw it into Claude just for a quick summary. And where the heck did that go? But they were, since April, actually, April 30th, they had done a realized volatility show just to discuss the realized volatility, which is different from implied volatility. And one of the things that they mentioned was around May 7th, you're going to see a bullish impulse because if you track the 30-day realized volatility, the March 30th rolls off out of the 30-day window, which means realized volatility comes down. And as realized volatility comes down, because March 30th was such a large vol event, and you can probably see it on VIX. Yeah, and that was like the last time that VIX was like up at that high, and we were hovering at around 30 points. And then since then we've been drifting lower, and as we drift lower, it means the realized volatility is actually, well, if you're only looking back 30 days, then it means that realized volatility will no longer include the March 30th window. And the March 30th window being the highest reading on VIX, one of the highest reading on VIX. And that's when the trend down on VIX kind of started. If realized volatility comes down, all control funds are required to buy back the index. So they'll start allocating a ton of money into the index, as they are required to. It's part of their rules. They are, as the title says, they are volatility control funds. So when it's high volatility, they sell. And then when it's low volatility, they buy, which is kind of odd, right? So with that happening on May 7th, it looks like today was the day that we pumped up quite a bit, right? Overnight. But basically they're saying with that up to May 7th, you don't want to get in front of this by shorting it. And that's just based on the vol control funds reallocating. So if you think of it in terms of like overall flows, you have vol control funds, you have CTA flows, and then you have the ongoing pension allocation, which is just permanently long, right? Then you have other flows too, but generally speaking, those are like the heavy flows. And when the CTAs are maxed out and vol control and our vol is really low, and it can't go any lower, that's when you normally think about hedging or downside. And that's when we would start flipping to playing, I guess, trendy downside moves. But in general, they're saying not to get in front of this by shorting the market, because it's not time to short yet. So far, the divergence looks pretty good between ES and NQ. But look at the OptionsDepth chart. Got a massive positive gamma area here, and it just keeps on getting more and more darker. So if you think about it, so I think I mentioned that I set gamma to an absolute value of 800, so we can kind of see all the stuff in between a bit better. The moment that you see the dark blue, that's when we enter the 800 absolute value. Then as we approach the green gamma peak line, it gets higher and higher, and then it gets even higher towards the end of the day for gamma reading. Like towards the end of the day at around 7350, you're looking at about 3000 gamma reading to 4600 seems. All Signals had a really good video out explaining the positive gamma that we're currently in right now, and not expecting large moves to the downside. VIX is climbing. And last night there was news at about 4 or 5 a.m. that came in that said, and I think it was like a Pakistani official that noted they're closer to reaching some sort of end to the war, which is why the market rocketed. A lot of very conflicting stuff. So I don't really know what to believe, especially because it's like the administration is, the US administration is trying to control sentiment, trying to control the market and allowing it to glide up while I guess pushing fake news for the most part. But yeah, VIX is climbing here a lot more than I thought it would. We're closing in on that gap, the VIX opening gap. I'm just going to zoom in here into the positioning for better luck. But just know that 73.45 and up are very large positioning. Alma's weekly upside target is 73.58. Getting pretty close to there. We didn't quite hit the centroid, and that's something I wanted to see on Monday, I believe. But that didn't happen. From a daily perspective, though, we're hanging out at around a centroid and the upside pivot. And centroid is, or the upside pivot is 73.20, which is said to be very weak, and you can kind of see it in terms of positioning, there's like nothing really there. So we can climb if we go up. Once we get above 73.20, I would expect this to kind of hold. Nice, yeah. I like the long. Very good long. Especially off the SMT divergence. Beautiful long. Yeah, once we get above 73.20, I would expect that to be the support after. Let me see if there's any news. Nope, no news. Okay. So we're just going to be subject to headline risk. You know what happened? You know why I think we got so many viewers yesterday? I think it's because that guy joined and he said hello, which is kind of funny. That it just, I guess it's from like an engagement perspective, from a chat engagement perspective, that it just, maybe YouTube algos just start pushing out the feed a bit more in on searches. I don't know, but I haven't been keeping track. But I might have had, I don't know if he ended up being a subscriber. And if he did, then that would explain why there was so much traffic, more traffic than usual anyways. And we're talking about like instead of like maybe 1 or 2 impressions, it made like 9 impressions or something. Kind of funny how that works. And I think a lot of people in Alma's chat want to short. They want to short the market. I think everybody wants to short the market. And she had said in her daily overview today, she said I'm gonna go on a quick rant here, but don't short the market. Everybody wants to short, but this is not the time to short. Otherwise, you'd just be losing money. And she means it from a swing trade perspective. So multi-day hold, or maybe even a month or 2 hold. She's just saying it's not the right time yet. Yeah, and just looking at like the day-to-day volume profile, I think most of them ended up building a node on the top end of the day, on the high end of the day. So they call that a P profile because it's the P shape, which basically says price confirms higher. If we get a lowercase b shape, then price basically says, hey, yeah, we traveled all this distance, came back down to the lows and kind of hung out there. So it's not confirming like a strong close or a strong market. So far, we've been seeing a lot of either capital D shapes or capital P shapes in the volume profile. $10 o'clock. Is there a reason why you didn't want to take that on the eval? Oh, gotcha. Understood. Yeah, that's like I said, you have crazy good discipline. NQ is not following right now. Yeah, that's a good point. That's how I learned to be a bit more disciplined than what I was doing before. Thinking about shorting here. I want to give it a shot on one account right now. Just a leg in. It's a little early for me. I'm not seeing the confirmation I want. I get the feeling that we're just going to also stay here. And just build some volume in this area here. And then eventually drift up. I'm going to see if I can sneak out like a 10-point trade or something. And there's something about the 15-minute NQ that made me really like that. Now that just brought us back to centroid, so really nothing much has happened yet. Brutal. I mean, that did go almost 8 points. But my TP's at 10. I don't know that I'm going to get it. 73.10. I wanted to, yeah, if we ended up going 73.10 or just underneath 73.10, that would have been ideal. Stop loss is like 5 points. Yeah. I mentioned short, but it already went almost 8 points, and now it's gonna start going against me. I wanted 10 points. Or, which would have been, like, I probably would have closed out at VWAP, but we didn't quite touch VWAP. The upward drift is just way too strong. Yeah, it is going to hit me out. And VIX is coming down. Yeah, it was a key area for VIX. So it was, from a VIX perspective, I didn't love it. Yeah, that one hit me out. But the unrealized profit or points did exceed the risk on that play. It's just unfortunate. I liked it on NQ much better, but I didn't play it on NQ. Yeah, for NQ, it would have given, from the potential entry, it would have given 50 points, a bit more than 50 points. It was definitely much better. Actually, it would have given much more than 50 points. 50 points was just the first 5-minute candle of where I would have entered. Actually, it gave closer to 80 points on NQ. And that thing totally stopped you at break even. And then now it's moving up, inching up. Yeah, there's like nothing but an upward drift. It's forward 73.40, 73.50. And these ones are really building up. Holy cow. 73.55, 73.60. But it's moving up. The size of the 73.50 dropped from 18,000 positions to just under 3,000 positions. So it closed out almost 15K positions. Since it was already on the previous, I guess, yesterday. It was on at the end of yesterday. And now they closed those, and it looks like they've opened up 73.55 and 73.60, 23K positions and 11K positions. It just keeps migrating up. Yeah, I definitely can't shake like the mean reversion trader in me, which is why I'm only looking for shorts. I'm glad that you took the breakout long. At least you're trying something new. Initially, I wanted to see a move into that 15-minute fair value gap from overnight, and it looks like we just did it. And that divergence between ES and NQ is kind of nice. But I don't have any signals. And I think my best plays are off of liquidity sweeps. That's how I achieve that 60% win rate, but I haven't been really following it lately. Okay, that was right off the 15-minute fair value gap. NQ reacted much more. And we're still hovering around that upside pivot. Kind of above it now. Just want to see this thing hold. think there's a slight divergence between ES and SPX too. Like SPX just gave like a 5-minute engulfing, but ES almost did like a equal highs. Oh, 73.50 came off drastically. Okay, let's see what's happening here. 73.50. Yeah, they just closed out all that. Whoever had the position size closed it all out. $73.50, $73.55, $73.60 still remain. Very large sizing. Here's the daily gamma chart, because price action generally likes to follow that a little bit better. I mean, yesterday, price action kind of followed that yellow line almost perfectly. And then finally broke out after 1 o'clock. Then came right back to the 72.60 pin to end the day. YM is continuing up. Friday's high on YM is pretty close, about 130 points away. It's the closest liquidity there. I think I mentioned overnight ES hit about 73, oh sorry, SPX hit about 73.39. Still a divergence between ES and SPX here, and NQ. Still inching up. Holy smokes. It's funny because we're inching up without an NQ here. Whereas NQ, I believe, was the primary driver of yesterday until YM took over. Vol Signals said this morning that he was talking about price action, and it was sitting at around like 73.10, 73.15 at the time, I believe. Let me double check that. Yeah, it was sitting around 73.10, 73.15. Yeah, at around 9 a.m. And at the time he was saying, yeah, we're likely to open up at 72.95, and that was just based on pre-market positioning. So I'm just gonna pop this up right here. You can see the pre-market positioning. 73.95. It's the largest dealer positive strike, and that's where balance is what he said, which is why we're likely to see that at open. We may open there, or we may drift towards there at the open. And well, it looks like we did open just around there. 73.94, 73.93, I believe. 72.93, 72.94, which is close enough. I'm just listening to Yam speak. I think I mentioned Yamco on Twitter. And they had a pre-market show in the morning, and they're saying that as long as 72.90 holds, they believe that we're just going to drift up. And that's how they kind of read the positioning for the most part. And then from a gamma level, you can kind of see it too. I mean, like the trough is sitting around 72.93 at around 9:30, and that was like the path of least resistance. I guess that's where balance was. And yeah, I guess that line was kind of like the line in the sand for the most part from a gamma perspective. From a positioning perspective, you can kind of see a positive cluster. Oops. Yeah, from positioning perspective, you can see a positive gamma cluster. Pre-market. This is the pre-market positioning, and it kind of takes us to 72.95 being the largest positioning in the area, and we're talking about like 1,600 positions, and 72.90 being that support if we do open up there. So this is likely the reason why Yams had 72.90 as his pivot, and Vol Signals had 72.95 as his potential balance on open. I want to give one more short a shot. Not much to go by besides the 5-minute top wick here. The risk is pretty small. It's a 15-minute candle close. Closed doji, high volume, relatively high volume. It's not higher volume than the previous, unfortunately. But the 5-minute did a higher volume. And normally I really like that. I get the feeling I'm going to get wicked out. It's just too strong. I shouldn't be trying these. I'll have to wait for some sort of sweep or something. I'm playing in the middle and I shouldn't be. If, come to think of it, your breakout trade, you said it was an orb, right? Opening range break off the 15. In theory, would you have just held the stop loss below that 15-minute, the 15-minute candle? Wait, a 954. Wait one sec. If you entered, I assume you entered in the middle of the 945 candle. And if you did, let's see, 3340. You entered even better than 945. Yeah, 3340. Yeah, it's around there. I guess in theory the stop loss should have been right below the lows of the day, or the opening lows, right? Oh, no, sorry. Not the 950 lows on the 5-minute chart. I think that's what. Straddle's at 20 right now. At 73.50, some long calls came in. About 2,600 customer long calls, which is going to provide a small negative gamma pocket there. And I think you can kind of see it on this tiny view here. Yeah, that opening range trade worked out very nicely. Why, just out of curiosity, how come you moved to break even? That was a very good opening range break trade. Now we should be drifting towards 73.45, 73.50. I think 73.50 is going to provide some sort of resistance there because of the dealer shorts, or dealer negative positions. $73.40, $73.45, $73.50. My target 73.50. Huh. It's funny. It lines up perfectly. If it's possible Iran deal reached before China visit. Ooh, that's good news. That's probably why we're pumping right now. Or all of a sudden had like a volume surge. Unlikely to send Witkoff and Kushner for talks. Trump, I feel US closing in on a deal with Iran. Iran war has good chance of ending. It's funny because earlier at around 9 o'clock, Iran has rejected such proposals in recent days. Yeah, come to think of it, I really liked your opening range break play as a trend following strategy. Kind of worked almost perfectly. Because I think the bias is up, right? And the bias has always been up, and I shouldn't have been shorting any of that in my opinion. But the bias has always been up. Alma says the bias is up. The gamma chart says the magnet is up. So Charm also says up. So it's kind of nutty that I would want to short. Like you basically have to. I don't have a good trend following strategy. Clearly, I'm a reversion trader. And having the 15-minute orb, as you said, that would have played out very nicely, especially if holding the stop loss below where you had it previously. I think that was a great play. On Bookmap, there's 73.75 is showing some orders, and 28.550 is showing orders on NQ. Trump asked on China indirectly supporting Iran. It is what it is. I think it's a topic they don't want to talk about. Yeah, the straddle was like grossly mispriced today. It seems like we're still just drifting up. Right to 73.50. VIX is just consolidating here at 17. Iran gas, all power plants using natural gas at max capacity. I got nothing here. Still, the orb trade was probably the best trade. $73.47. 73.50 is getting close. Or shorts run 380 ES. Yeah, that would be nice. 7380, that's about 7 more points. Wonder if he'll give it. 73.50. 73.50. We're at, I think 4.8 was the high there. Aligns with the 3 fib levels of the 15-minute orbs. Nice. It definitely can. I can see that happening too. It's just it has to get above that 73.50 level. Like it could run between 73.50 and 73.55 and then kind of pull back. $73.75 is the largest level right now on Bookmap. It's 11.05. VIX is kind of doing nothing at the moment. Still about 2 points away from 63.50 here. Global debt rises over 4.4 trillion to record 353 trillion in Q1. Lots of money printing. Holy smokes. See how there's this weird kind of resistance here? That's definitely the influence of the 7350 position. Not to mention, Bookmap also has a crap ton of orders there. To 7340. I can't imagine there'd be that much of a pullback though. At the very most, maybe like a 15-minute fair value gap fill. But really, and Q doesn't look like it's ready to go yet. It's interesting that the positive gamma here kind of cleared out. Whoever it is closing up their 73.55 positions now. And a lot of the 73.60 is gone. So the gamma profile has changed substantially. They moved it up as wild. To be fair, there's like all-time highs everywhere. every day it's in like an all-time high in something. It's kind of wild. But that was a good spot to try a short there, because of the 73.50. But now that positioning has changed substantially, I would caution against taking another short off that level. Instead, I would like to probably see this run up to 73.65 next, because the positioning came off. But that move down there, probably it correlated with these guys dumping their positions. 73.55 and 73.60. But yeah, that definitely that 73.50 hit too early. Like if it was approaching like the end of the day, like near the last 2 hours of the day, I would say we might actually pin somewhere around there. But now the pin looks like it could be 73.70 area. But it's going to be hard to cross 73.65. Very challenging to cross 73.65. I agree. Longs will prevail. But the problem is I don't know where to enter the longs. Like say the belief is that by the end of the day we'll hit 73.60. I don't know where I would enter. I think that would be my challenge. Maybe off the 15-minute fair value gap fill, I would possibly try that. Yeah, here comes NQ. NQ is doing the move up now. VIX is kind of slow today. Also this week, I think I mentioned like following Chem Carson's monthly OPEX cycle. This week, in theory, is a buy to dip week. So anytime you see a dip, you generally want to buy because of the Vanna and Charm flows. And intraday it happens too, which is why he typically posts a meme of a lady, a rather large lady, jumping into a pool, into a floaty device, flotation device, and then she drops into the pool only to pop back up really high. So it's like very buoyant price action is the implication there. And that's normally, so OPEX is the third Friday of the month, which would be May 15th. And the full week prior to May 15th is May 4th to 8th. And May 4th to 8th, you generally have that Vanna and Charm support. So everything is kind of supportive for the most part. I find it interesting that these large positions are changing so much. Normally these large positions would stay quite a bit. Actually, they would normally stay until close. Right now you're risking 200 per trade. Once I get my trades right, taking only quality trades, I will move up the risk to 600 in eval and 400 in funded. I see. Understood. Yeah, my issue with well, I guess what you're saying is like if you're risking 200 per trade, you'll just size accordingly to make sure that your stop loss is at the right spot, right? So if you wanted your stop loss below, let's say a 5-minute candle, you have to make sure that, yeah, okay, you have to make sure that you take it on MES or something. But if for instance the 200, if you end up getting a 4-point stop loss, you'll be able to take the equivalent of 1 ES or 10 MES. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. I do a lot of silly things with the evals. Which I'm not exactly proud of. But when in the live account, I don't trade it frequently. I only trade it when there's like an opportunity that I shouldn't miss, i.e. like an A++ kind of trade. And which means the risk is really small too. I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I was like, see, like, it's kind of tough because, like, doing it on stream, like, I was trying somewhat not to be, like, I was trying to adjust my trade style because typically I would take evals a little bit more aggressively. Exactly like you say, because it's cheap. It's cheaper. It's not your real money. Like it's whatever it costs, like 50 USD, 80 USD, whatever it is, right? No activation fee. So it's, you just kind of want to run it, get to funded really quickly, and then from there work on your funded account. But the issue that I was having, it's like a dilemma, and this is something that I've had ever since I started streaming. So I contemplated stopping a few times. It's just like, and maybe I'm too focused on adjusting my trade style to suit, so that way it doesn't look like a moronic, idiotic way of trading, right? Trying to run up all these evals, for instance. Like typically what I like to do is if it's an A+ trade, I size up, but I'm not sizing up. And then, so my stats aren't aligned with how I normally trade. But one thing I find about streaming, one thing I like about streaming is my stream of consciousness, I have to say. So it causes me to think a little bit more and how to put it into words, which is the one thing I kind of enjoy about streaming for the most part. You talk about mangoes? You can't talk about mangoes in Canada in the same sentence. um, the Yeah, I think all of our mangoes are imported, but it's good to know that it's mango season in India. We get mangoes, but it's imported. Yeah, and in Canada, there's like a very short. I mean, right now, like, do you guys in India measure in degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit? Because if it's in degrees Celsius right now, we're hovering at about 5 degrees Celsius. Yesterday we hit 19 degrees Celsius, which we were happy about midday. But today we're back at about 5 with a high of 8 degrees Celsius. Like right now, what is the temperature there today at night? Because you're from South India, right? It's even hotter. $30. Wow. And that's at night. Amazing. So that is a really good summer day for us. We're talking about mid-July to mid-August. You'll hit 30 degrees on during a reasonable heat wave. So we might even hit like 35 at the very most during a heat wave, but generally our temperature is sitting around 25 to 28 degrees Celsius on the high side. So peak of the afternoon. And this is like around the Toronto area. $50 max. Wow. How do you survive that? Are you just used to it, or do you stay in an AC'd environment, air conditioned environment? Or ACs? When you say AC, are these like window units? Or are they central air kind of units that sit outside of the house? Oh, it's a mini split, like a split system. I see. So they're like heat pump, right? Yeah, I have one of those too, but only in my attic, like the upper floor of my house, because it gets really hot. And 4 ACs is wild. Oh, like one per room is pretty normal for a split unit. Yeah, I assume it's Mitsubishi or something like that, or LG. Yeah, I have a Mitsubishi, and I had to get more of the fluid injected in it recently. And my unit, because the line travels, the split line, the line that travels inside to outside, travels a long distance. I tend to have a lot of condensation issues in my walls. So I've been trying to fix that with more insulation. Lots of insulation. And 50 degrees is wild though. I think I've experienced 40 degrees when I travel south towards like south of the USA, like Florida or something. And it gets really hot, and we always end up staying indoors when the days are really hot. And then maybe at night you might go out to enjoy something, like walking around and stuff. There's a second rejection as you were mentioning. And it was after the NQ 15-minute fair value gap fully filled. But it's not much of a rejection. Like, we're talking about 9-point range so far. Maybe 10-point range. So, what languages do you speak there? Your English is unbelievably good, based on your writing, and you even write in short forms, like acronyms. So that's why I would never have guessed you were from a country that doesn't speak English as their number one language, as their primary language. Oh, English is taught from preschool. Wow. Hindi is secondary in schools? Holy smokes. I would never have assumed that. So when you're texting your friends or family, do you text in English? And when you speak to family or friends, do you speak Hindi or do you speak English? English, your local language is called Telugu to talk. Oh, I see. I see. That's very impressive. I actually didn't know that. That everyone was taught English from preschool. I'm not proud of the words that I know. That my Indian friends they taught me back in school, back in middle school and high school. The only words we know are bad words that we teach each other, sadly. Yeah, and I think the bad words are pretty universal from the sounds of it. That's true. Yeah, that that's very true. Very true. Yeah, over here, because it's such a melting pot of cultures. There's like lots of Indians, lots of Chinese. You get Koreans, Japanese, and Jamaicans, uh, uh, Tamils, Pakistanis, you name it, Russians. They're all here, and it's such a melting pot. And most people only know the bad words. Oh, something just happened here. Um, yeah, I traveled to Hong Kong, in Southeast Asia, uh, like Thailand, Laos is where I visited, and it was crazy hot there too. They did like some lantern festival, and we wanted to go there for the lantern festival. Oh, interesting. I always wondered that, okay, why they call themselves Tamils. And it's just a neighboring state. Yeah, I grew up with a lot of different Indian people, but yeah, I can't say that I know the region that they are from. But the Tamils would always say they're Tamils. I've also been to Europe. How about you? Have you traveled outside of India? Yeah, India is pretty large. Where would you go if you went outside of India? Where would you go first? Oh wow, that's impressive. Yeah, if you had to choose one, or if you had to choose a country you would visit first, where would you where would you go? Just curious. Bali and Japan in Asia and Italy in Europe. Nice. I haven't been to Japan yet, and nor have I been to Bali. Bali looks beautiful. Japan looks like a good time too. Italy, I've only been to Rome in Italy, and it was beautiful there. I kind of wish we spent more time there, but yeah, we only did about like maybe 3 days, 3 4 days in Rome, and then we went to Paris after that. But I've also been to Istanbul, and that was right before Rome. We were kind of hopping from major cities, if you will. Istanbul, Rome, Paris, and then London. Macedonia. So when are you gonna plan it? Because like what I hate about where we are in the world right now is that we're kind of sleepwalking into more and more wars. And I feel like that window to travel is starting to close a little more and more. That's what I worry about anyways, which is why like you gotta pick and choose where you travel, and hopefully the timing is right. Like, yeah. Three parts, eh? Like East Asia, Western Europe, and then Americas. US controlled Western Hemisphere. Yep. Israel led Gulf. Interesting. And China, Russia. India, China, Russia. So basically the Asian countries. All of Asia for the most part. So Western Hemisphere, which would include some like Western Europe. Israel led Gulf. Yeah, I can see that. The thing is, like, India, China, Russia, like, the population is all there, right? So all, like, the free trade is going to be great between India, China, and Russia. The West definitely depends on the consumption of goods. And because the West consumes so much, I don't know how that kind of goes away, because it's got to go away with China and the protectionism that's kind of happening now, right? With the free trade, prices of everything will rocket, scarcity. That hopefully pushes onshoring back, pushes manufacturing back to the Americas to some degree. Europe is heavily dependent on China from a consumption perspective, or all their goods are made in China. Yes, exactly. Canada's the exact same way. We exported all of our manufacturing. Technically, US is kind of the same too, but less on the climate change stuff, but just more so on a cheap goods perspective. So, I guess capitalism to some degree. All the goods are made in China and then branded and resold here. Canada does have oil, you're right. But we have leaders that refuse to allow the processing of oil on Canadian lands because of the green energy initiative and the whole climate change fiasco. But now our leader is more center left, and he's starting to kind of approve oil and gas exploration. A little, but still not to the degree that a right-leaning politician, like a conservative, would do. It's sad, yeah. Like we have tons of oil, we just don't pull it out of the ground, and we don't process it here because of climate change. But as things get more and more expensive, I think I actually voted for him once, and out of like the 2 different elections, but it was just due to lack of an opposition. In theory, I probably should have thrown away my vote, but I do not, like, I wanted Trudeau out of office. Or someone who was more center, because he was like very far left in his policies, and it was gutting manufacturing in Canada, and also all the oil and resource exploration, and also the increases in tax pushes a lot of companies to other countries like the US and even out to the Middle East. Like OptionsDepth, for instance, they recently restructured their corporation, and it is now a entity of the UAE, which is amazing because they just made who knows how much profit just from saving on tax. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I find that most immigrants they tend to be more more on the liberal side. Yeah, at least when they move to Canada, they tend to be more on the liberal side. I mean, don't get me wrong, having immigrants has been great. I mean, I'm not an immigrant. I was born here, but my parents were immigrants, right? So, I understand immigration is completely required, and I am for it. I just don't believe in uncontrolled, like free borders, and I think that's where a lot of people tend to draw the line, but they're scared to kind of say it. Like they don't believe in borders, and or the far left doesn't believe in borders, and they speak out the most. And most people just don't want problems, and they just say, okay, yeah, like no immigrants, but which is stupid, in my opinion. Or sorry, they don't say no immigrants. They say, yeah, free borders. Immigrants should be allowed here, and I'm in agreement that immigrants should be allowed here, but there should be a very controlled process, if you will. From Laos, Southeast Asia. Yeah. was that a was that a question mark? Like, what the heck is Laos? I believe you know what Laos is, but so I don't think it's that. I think it's more like, am I the only person you know from Laos? I think I think a lot of the immigrant stories is very much the same. It's just like they're trying to leave their country in order to find, um, I guess, some sort of freedom and the ability to work or for more. And a lot of the immigrants that came over during like the 70s and the 80s, especially because of the Vietnam War in the area, that's why most people got displaced, ended up in like refugee camps in the southeast area in Thailand, and then oftentimes they get sponsored by someone they know that lives in Canada or US. And some churches actually also sponsored um, refugees. And then when the immigrants get here, they have to start off from the bottom. So a lot of times we're living in non-ideal conditions where it's a little bit dangerous, um, and just not very great. And then a lot of times everyone and most of the immigrants end up in that same cycle, and their kids grow up in the same cycle, and then their grandkids grow up in the same cycle, and then it becomes this this perpetuating cycle that one person will eventually break when they want more. I think that's like the typical immigrant story in North America. I always thought that they're all similar. I didn't realize that it was Hinduism, but I believe that like the Buddhist kind of religion, like it was all very similar in that Southeast Asian region. Like our monks look exactly the same. But I might be mistaking that for Buddhism within India. Like I think Buddhism is also practiced in India, correct? But our writing in Thailand and Laos, and I think in Cambodia too, it's very similar to this. I think like the Indian scriptures, depending on which language, I guess. But I think most of it kind of comes from there. Even some of the clothes, like traditional clothes, they all kind of they look like they have influence from the Indian culture. Now I don't know if it's South Indian, North Indian, East or West Indian, but I find that the traditional wear looks like it's very influenced from that South Asian area. Or just curious, for food in your area, do you have access to many different cuisines? Like if you wanted Chinese food, if you wanted Vietnamese or Japanese sushi, maybe some noodle soup from Vietnam, is there any influence or diversity in cuisine over there? Oh wow, that's impressive. And see, like that is not the impression I get from watching movies and stuff. And like I said, I haven't been to India, so. But we definitely have all those same cuisines in Canada, mainly because of the immigrants. And I don't even know. Like I'm not talking about like Bollywood movies. I'm talking about like the American versions of the movies that are made there, like um, I don't know, Slumdog Millionaire. That was an old movie. There's also like movies that are Hollywood that take place in India, and I guess you just don't get the full culture from that. Yeah, so I would say it's not very like a cultured approach to learning what's available there. And then if you watch like a guy like Anthony Bourdain, who travels the world and eats at various different countries and restaurants, he's always eating the local food, right? Am I gonna be able to find that on Netflix? It's funny because like the Western, like the general Hollywood slash Western experience when it comes to someone who's an immigrant and someone who's Indian, often raises the issues where these movies often raises the issues of growing up as an Indian in the US, and how the culture is so different, and their parents wanting them to become doctors and stuff like that. And it's always about the teenager or the 20-year-old that's trying to break out of that mold that the parents want in order to make their own choices. That's pretty much what's depicted here in the Western media, if you will, or Western movies. Better use VPN, yeah. Yeah, I definitely don't torrent these days. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to do that. Yeah, yeah. That's definitely happened, and so far I've haven't received those. I used to. It wasn't a fine, but it was like a warning, and we get a lot of warnings. So um I stopped torrenting as a result, and it's been a long time since I've torrented, sadly. But that's crazy. Indian national went to Canada for a job. Downloaded it. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm getting the feel. I'm just looking at markets right now, and I'm getting the feeling that we're gonna pin somewhere around here. 73.40. Suppressive charm right now. Things have changed quite drastically ever since that 73.55, 73.60 came off. Initially, I was thinking we settle at around 73.50 or 50 to 60 area. But it's doesn't seem as likely now. All right, Koshik, I think I'm gonna stop for lunch. It's a good chat. Yeah, have a good one. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. See you then.